Welcome to Beyond the Comic Book. I'm Ed, and today I want to break down the Disney Plus series Secret Invasion. For starters, I'd like to say that the series should have been an actual movie in the theaters for a few reasons. First, many people agree that the Secret Invasion comic book run was a bigger deal than the Infinity Saga. So to have the Infinity Saga run for several years but limit the Secret Invasion to a few weeks on a streaming platform that not many people have access to was a huge mistake. Second, Nick Fury has been a mainstay in the MCU from the beginning, and yet he gets a streaming series, not a movie. And third, this story could have given Marvel Studios the box office win that they so desperately needed. It made no sense to stream this story. Not to mention, the series cost over $200 million, the cost of at least 2 good MCU movies. That being said, many of us accepted the chosen platform and still had high hopes for the series. It was a really good story in the beginning, in my opinion, but then we started to see problems pop up here and there. So let's break it down one episode at a time, okay? Episode 1 sets the stage in Moscow. There we find Agent Everett Ross, one of my personal favorites, talking about the Skrull conspiracy theory with Agent Prescott, who seems to have lost his mind a little bit. To me, it was very obvious that Agent Ross was trying to downplay the conspiracy, and then we find out that he was a Skrull after he was chased down by Talos and falls from a building and dies in front of Maria Hill. Then we see Nick Fury coming down from the Sabre space station in a Moscow forest to meet Maria Hill. I could immediately tell that they were trying to make us believe that Fury was getting too old and showing weakness. They even had a few characters mention how he had lost the step and wasn't the same Fury after the blip. At this point, Fury, Maria, and Talos set the stage for the entire show while discussing the fact that there were a group of Skrulls on Earth who were promised by Fury that he would help them find a home of their own after the events of the Captain Marvel movie. It turns out that these Skrulls, led by a young Skrull named Gravik, became disgruntled when Fury disappeared in the snap and left the planet after returning during the blip. Feeling that Fury abandoned them, they decided they wanted to take the Earth for themselves, calling it New Skrullos. They create a base in an abandoned nuclear plant poisoned by radiation because Skrulls resist radiation. And so they plan to fake a series of American and Russian attacks to start a nuclear war to make humans go extinct. Fury, pretending to be a little rusty, leaves his meeting with Maria Hill and Talos and allows himself to be captured by Sonya Falworth's SIS agents so he can find out what she knows by bugging her office. His plan works and he returns to Talos and Maria to listen in on Sonya. We also find that Talos' daughter Gaia, who we met as a little girl in Captain Marvel, is working with the Skrull Rebellion until she learns that Gravik had her mother Soren killed. She then begins to work as a double agent against Gravik. The first attack on a Russian annual celebration goes as planned, with Gravik shooting and killing Maria Hill while disguised as Fury. While this episode was good as well as shocking, they decided to kill Maria Hill early in the story, ruining any chance of us getting a real Sword and Shield movie. Not to mention the visual of Nick Fury's likeness being used to kill a fan favorite. I really hated that part. Episode 2 opens with a flashback recap of 1995 footage from the Captain Marvel movie showing the moment Fury and Talos created a bond. Then we cut to an abandoned building in 1997 Brixton, London, where Fury and Talos have gathered a group of Skrulls, including the new young recruit Gravik, whose parents were killed in the Skrull-Kree War. Fury promises the group that if they help keep Earth safe, he along with Carol Danvers' Captain Marvel would find them a new home. Fury looks Gravik in the eyes as he says, "If you keep your word, I'll keep mine." And of course, we now know that the Skrulls kept their promise, working as a spy network for Fury. But due to the snap, Fury was not able to keep his end of the bargain. However, there was 22 years between Fury's promise and the snap. I don't feel that Fury and Carol Danvers put forth a good effort to find the Skrulls a new home. This is what caused Gravik and his followers to lose trust in Fury. Returning to the present, we see the aftermath of the explosion from the last episode. Gravik and Gaia escapes while Fury is kneeling over the body of Maria Hill. Then he's pulled away by Talos in a disguise to keep him from being arrested by the Russians. As Fury and Talos escape on a train, Fury finds out from Talos that there were currently over 1 million Skrulls on Earth. Fury lets Talos know that he should have consulted him because humans can't get along with each other and there's no way that they can coexist with Skrulls. Meanwhile, news networks engage in a war of words about whether Americans were responsible for the attack on Moscow. Then Gravik invites himself to a secret Skrull council meeting where we find that Skrulls are impersonating several world leaders such as the British Prime Minister and the commander of NATO. Gravik manages to force the council to declare him Skrull General with absolute power. Gravik returns to the base in Moscow and announces that he is now Skrull General, and his followers begin to cheer. Then we find that there's a secret genetics lab where Pagan meets with Rosa Dalton, a Skrull disguised as a geneticist working on a way to create super Skrulls from the DNA of Earth heroes and aliens collected from the Battle of Earth in Marvel's Endgame movie. Gaia sneaks in as Pagan informs Rosa that he could not find the location of a DNA collection called the Harvest that includes the DNA of Captain Marvel, the Hulk, Mantis, and more. Meanwhile, Rhodey is questioned by the European heads of state in London about Fury and Maria Hill's presence in Moscow. Due to Rhodey's very convincing statements, the EU seemed satisfied that there was not enough proof that the Americans had anything to do with the bombing. I believe that it was at this moment that the Skrull impersonating the British Prime Minister decided that they needed to replace Rhodey. I believe the Skrulls replaced Rhodey between his meeting with the EU heads of state and his meeting with Fury, which takes place in the next scene. During his meeting with Fury, Rhodey seems like himself until he goes into a monologue and switches from calling him Fury to calling him Nick before telling him he's fired. When he gets outside, Fury almost collapses on a bench, realizing that he was just talking to a Skrull and not Rhodey. Next, we see Sonya Falsworth enter the SIS interrogation site where the Skrull Brogan, who was captured by the police in Moscow after the bombing, is being questioned. Sonya successfully finds out that the Skrulls are building the Super Skrull machine to give themselves power. Gravik then shows up to retrieve Brogan, taking him to the forest and forcing Pagan to kill him for giving up information. Fury then arrives at his secret home where we find that he is married to a Skrull named Vara, whom he calls Priscilla. Now this was a big shock to me to find out that Fury is a married man and married to an alien. In episode 3, we see Gravik sends 3 Skrulls to infiltrate the Royal Navy to attack a NATO plane carrying officials. Then he meets with the Skrull Council and shares his plan to turn them into Super Skrulls. We then see Fury at home with Priscilla, the both of them attempting to safely navigate the subject of Fury missing after the snap and then voluntarily leaving after the blip for years. Priscilla lets him know that she took back her own life while he was gone and became herself again after being who he wanted her to be for over 20 years. She then gets a suspicious phone call that gets Fury's attention because she spoke cryptically and told him it was not important. We later find out that she too has joined Gravik's calls, but to a lesser extent. In the next scene, Gravik questions Gaia about who she thinks the mole is that is giving out their secrets. At this point, it is clear that he suspects her as being the mole. He takes her with him to meet with Talos. Along the way, he feeds her information about the submarine attack on the NATO plane that no one else knows about. After the meeting gets heated, Talos stabs Gravik through the hand with a knife and walks out. This is when we find out that Gravik has already gone through the DNA transfer because his hand begins to heal using the extremist power from Iron Man 3. He also received the DNA of Groot, Frostbeast, and Cull Obsidian. Gravik walks out after Talos, just missing Gaia passing Talos a burner phone while in disguise. Meanwhile, Fury tracks down Talos in a bar and requests his help with a Skrull high up in the US government. Talos says that Fury is helpless without the Skrull spy network. Then Fury brags about being a rising agent when Talos met him. But Talos reveals to us that Fury was a nobody agent until he started using the Skrulls as his own personal spy network in 1997. In my opinion, that was very profound. It made me think about all those times I talked about how good Fury was, but it was the Skrulls that helped him become greater than he already was. Fury and Talos gets the location of the commander of the British submarine named Robert Fairbanks, who was replaced by a Skrull. They break into his house and threaten him by gunpoint. When he gets the drop on Talos, Fury puts the gun to the head of a young boy in the next room. It's not known if the boy was a Skrull or not, but Fairbanks showed real feelings towards him. He let Talos go, but still refused to give the code to call off the attack. Talos calls to find the real Commander Fairbanks in the Skrull containment room, and read his mind. They get the code from Gaia, and Talos calls off the attack. Talos tells Gaia to run to escape Gravik, but she is shot in the chest and left for dead. We then see Priscilla getting a gun from a safety deposit box and receiving a call from Rhodey to meet, but she looks like she is hesitant to do so. Episode 4 opens with Gaia healing herself using the Extremist power and having a flashback showing her using the machine to become a Super Skrull. Then the scene cuts to Priscilla having a romantic flashback of her and Fury in Paris in 2012 before her meeting with Rhodey. She tries to convince Rhodey not to force her to take out Fury, but he tells her that if she didn't do it, he would. She makes it home only to find out that Fury is already there. They begin to talk and Fury lets her know that he was listening in on the conversation with Rhodey. They recite one of her favorite poems together and then fire on each other, missing on purpose. Fury then states in a comical way, "I don't know if this means we should break up or get married." Then Priscilla asks him if he could have ever really loved her in her true Skrull form. And as he walks out the door, he says, "Now we'll never know." Meanwhile, Gravik and Pagan are preparing for their next attack, which includes the US president on foreign ground, so that they can blame it on the Russians. Pagan pleads to him to pay attention to the fact that Gaia is not with them at the moment. Gravik stops him by saying he knows that she is the mole and that he's already taken care of her. Fury breaks into Rhodey's hotel room to give a peace offering that turns out to be a liquid tracking device in a bottle of whiskey. He then, in so many words, lets Rhodey know that he knows he is a Skrull and that he wants his job back or he'll leak the information to the press. Rhodey then pulls out a thumb drive with a video of Gravik disguised as Fury shooting Maria Hill in Moscow. Fury leaves angrily and then follows Rhodey to the president's motorcade where they are attacked by Gravik and his followers. A huge firefight breaks out as Fury and Talos try to free the US president from the overturned vehicle. While Talos is attempting to break the bulletproof glass with his fist, he is wounded by Pagan and partially transforms. He eventually breaks the glass and Fury takes the president to his own vehicle. Gravik then transforms into a US soldier and takes Talos to Fury before stabbing him in the chest and leaving him for dead. Reinforcements arrive and Gravik retreats. Fury gets into the car, looks out of the window at Talos' body on the ground and drives off. Now this was a very sad moment to me because Talos was the only person trying to bring humans and Skrulls together, only to be left alone in the street. Episode 5 opens with Fury arriving at the hospital with the US president, but is not allowed to go in the back with him. So he stands guard in case the Skrulls show up. Gravik then arrives at his base and his followers barely look at him. He begins to blame Pagan for their failures and Pagan throws it back on him as the others look on. After hearing enough, Gravik spears Pagan through the chest using Groot's power, killing him instantly. He then sends his followers to take care of Priscilla for not following through with getting rid of Fury. As they all leave, Beto stares at Gravik in disgust. Gravik calls Rhodey and tells him to keep the president alive and tell the press that the Russians and the Skrulls attacked the president together. He also tells them to show satellite footage of the Skrull base of operations to further prove their alliance. At this point, we realize that he intends to sacrifice the innocent Skrull refugees in the process. When Rhodey arrives at the hospital, he informs Fury that he has already released the footage of Gravik disguised as him killing Maria Hill. Fury then feels the heat of being placed on the most wanted list and goes into hiding while collecting resources. Rhodey tells the president that they have to strike the Skrull base to prevent the human extinction. Back at the Skrull base, Gravik is questioned and attacked by Beto and the other Skrull soldiers for killing Pagan. Gravik uses his powers to defeat Beto and the rest of the soldiers. We then see that Sonya Falsworth acquires the plans for the Super Skrull machine from the scientists, burning down their lab afterwards. It appears to me that Sonya is a lot like Fury in that she is not only trying to stop the Skrulls, but she's attempting to strengthen her own hand at the same time. Then Fury and Gaia meet to formulate a plan. Fury is supposed to retrieve the harvest to make a deal with Gravik, while Gaia goes to Priscilla so they can give Talos a proper burial. Fury asks her if she's going to be okay and she says yes, I'll put on a good face, which implies that she's going to transform into someone else to complete their plans. After burying Talos, Gaia and Priscilla are attacked by the remaining Skrull army, but manage to defeat them using a stash of weapons Fury had for emergencies. Fury lands at an airport disguised as an older European man using the widow's veil given to him by Mason, the field support spy for hire we met in the Black Widow movie. Fury is then picked up by Sonya to complete their part of the plan. Along the way, Fury explains that after the Battle of Earth in the Marvel Endgame movie, he sent a team of Skrulls led by Gravik to the site to collect any blood left behind by the Avengers and Thanos' army, calling it the Harvest. They retrieve the Harvest Vial from one of Fury's many fake grave sites. Then he makes a phone call to an unidentified person saying, "It's time, let's finish this." Episode 6 opens with Priscilla leaving her badly damaged home, while Fury is calling her on her burner phone to say goodbye. They hang up and he walks off into a dark alley. Next, we see a small vehicle slowly approaching the gates of the Skrull base. The guards fire warning shots into the air and then fire on the car when it continues to approach. Suddenly, they are shot down from the forest by Fury, who we now know was Gaia in disguise. She checks a handheld Geiger counter and begins to act as if the radiation is affecting her to make Gravik believe she is Fury. She stumbles into the lab that holds the Super Skrull machine and sees Gravik was waiting there. They exchange words until Gaia finally gives Gravik the vial containing the harvest. She tells him that he can have all the power if he agrees to leave Earth to find a home for the Skrulls. He takes the vials and checks the DNA contained within it. The computer shows that it contains the DNA of Ghost, Captain America, Thanos, Corvus Glaive, Outrider, Proxima Midnight, Captain Marvel, Abomination, Mantis, Cull Obsidian, Drax, Korg, Ebony Maw, Frostbeast, Hulk, Black Panther, Chitauri, Valkyrie, Thor Odinson, Gamora, Winter Soldier, Flora Colossus, and more. On the panel, there appears to be up to 140 DNA samples in the vial. Gaia collapses inside the Super Skrull machine, pretending to be dying as Gravik activates the machine. They both are exposed to the DNA transfer and the machine stops. Gravik is transformed into a muscular Skrull while Gaia is still disguised as Fury. Gravik slaps Gaia, knocking her to the ground, then attempts to punch as she catches it. Her arm transforms into a Hulk-like arm, punching Gravik through the roof of the building, knocking down a large smokestack. As the smoke clears, we see Gaia walking as Fury, then transforming back into herself. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Sonya Falsworth calls Rhodey on the phone and informs him that Fury is on his way to the hospital and that he needs to move the president. As they move the president to another room, Sonya begins to take down all of the guards until there is only Rhodey. The real Fury walks in and begins to tell the president everything, while Sonya holds Rhodey at gunpoint. Fury tells the president that if he fires a nuke at the Skrull base, he would be killing dozens of humans that the Skrulls replaced and are holding captive. Then Rhodey grabs the gun that the president was holding, pushes Sonya to the ground. Fury grabs Sonya's gun as she falls and shoots Rhodey in the head. He falls dead and transformed back into the Skrull Rava. Back at the Skrull base, Gaia walks towards Gravik, activating the extremist power in her right arm and Drax's strength in her left arm, while Gravik activates Groot in his right arm and Abomination in his left. They both go back and forth switching out powers until they finally activate Captain Marvel's power, flying straight up and fighting in close combat. Gravik begins to choke Gaia until she activates the Mantis power, putting Gravik to sleep. Gravik falls, creating a small crater. The battle then continues on the ground until Gaia uses Captain Marvel's power to blast a large hole in Gravik's chest, killing him. The human captives are freed, including Agent Ross and Rhodey, who is dressed in a hospital gown and appears to be very weak. This leads many people to believe that Rhodey has been a Skrull since Captain America Civil War. As this is going on, we hear the voice of the US President declaring war on all aliens currently on Earth, giving Sonya Falsworth the opportunity to form an alliance with Gaia, who is now the most powerful being in the galaxy. The final scene ends with Fury and Priscilla, who now wants to be called by her Skrull name, Vara. They discuss working together during the Peace Summit, and then they travel up to the Saber space station together. While the series was pretty good in my opinion, I feel that the last 3 episodes were rushed and the ending seemed to fizzle out. I mean, I still don't understand how Gaia was able to kill Gravik so easily with all of the durability powers that he had. Just Thor's power alone can withstand the blast from Captain Marvel, but when you add Thanos, Hulk, and the Abomination, he should have been nearly impossible to kill. What are your thoughts about the series? What do you think happens next? Please like, share, and subscribe so that we can discuss more.